Hey folks, it's Finn. I'm really excited for this week's topic because it's something that I've not talked about, not in one whole video anyway. So what I'm going to talk about today is spirituality, specifically my own spirituality and how that's grown and evolved and what it is. This is something that when I did my video that you all said you'd really like to hear about, and this really did genuinely surprise me. I don't know why. I guess it's one of those things where you just fear for talking about politics or religion, you know, it's one of those kind of emotive topics. So I was really quite wonderfully pleased to actually see that you want to know. So let me stop rambling and tell you about my spirituality. From being really young, I've always believed that there was something else. I grew up in a family that really didn't have any particular religious beliefs, but at the same time were very open. My dad was really open. He was like the biggest influence in my early life. And he was very much into believing that anything could happen in the mystery of life and aliens and all sorts of things. So I think I got my open mind from him, and I always believed in something. And I really enjoyed going to Sunday school when I was a youngster. I remember all that. I remember winning a pop-up book of the Good Samaritan, and I absolutely loved it. And I loved all the parables and the stories from the Bible and things like that. And it was something that, you know, I just kind of took for granted that there was something out there. I never attempted to follow any specific religion or anything though at all. But I carried this belief of there being something else as I kind of got older. But I never did anything about it because, as you know, if you watch my videos, I've spent most of my time in the thick of alcoholism and drug addiction, so I never really got into any of that. The first time I actually really started to look deeply at my spiritual beliefs and what was out there and practices and what have you was after a period of homelessness, and it was about 2007, I believe, roughly. At the time I was living with my boyfriend and his mum, and I was very mentally unwell at the time, and my boyfriend's mum was really supportive of the pair of us because both of us were quite poorly people back then. And I started to read some self-help books, and the first book I picked up was The Celestine Prophecy. And it was the first time I'd ever actually read anything remotely spiritual, and the ideas in there were things that would really make sense to me, really common sense stuff about it. It's very much kind of psychology and spirituality. I think that's how I describe The Celestine Prophecy. And I got loads of ideas in there about how I felt and why I felt the way I did, and the idea that there was like a power in the world that we could tap into, you know. And from there I decided to try some meditation, and I joined some Buddhist meditation groups, and I just absolutely fell in love with it instantly. I was just so ripe for actually getting to grips with some kind of spiritual practice, and I loved meditation. I loved the lessons that the Buddhists gave, and I learnt so much, and I did loads of growing in that period of time because of that. But reflecting on that now, I think what was missing was that I was trying to kind of take what I found in these Buddhist meetings and make it my own. But I was kind of trying to do it like other people were, if that makes sense. And so I was looking at these people, and I really wanted the faith that they had and the spiritual experiences that they had, but my meditation didn't seem to be doing anything for me, and I thought I was missing the trick and what have you. I realise now, of course, I was just too drunk really to actually really properly engage with that. But anyway, that started off a lifetime of interest in spiritual practices and meditation specifically. But I was still drinking and drugging, and so you can't really have clarity of mind and a deep spirituality when you're clouding your brain and your body with drink and drugs. So that's a bit of a background as to kind of my beliefs and where it's brought me to. But it's been in the rooms of Alcoholics Annonymous that my spirituality has really taken on a huge life of its own and really developed. In Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the steps is that a willingness to believe in a power greater than yourself. And the gift of AA is that people often get AA wrong. They think it's a religious program. It is a spiritual program, but there's no kind of prescribed religion. You don't have to go to any organised religion. It's whatever works for you. And Alcoholics Anonymous is full of people that are atheists, agnostics, Christians, Buddhists, all different beliefs. It doesn't matter as long as you are willing to believe in a power greater than yourself. And that's something I've always been able to get down with. I never really understood the concept of God. The religions I kind of knew of, I didn't like this idea of a commanding God that was going to tell me off and judge me. I already felt like a bad human being as it was. I always had this kind of idea that I was being punished because I was just bad at my core, and so this idea of a punishing God was one that I moved away from. But spirituality was something I gravitated towards, and it was this idea that you developed your own concept of your own higher power that really opened things up for me, because rather than what I've been trying to do was kind of soak up these different kind of spiritual books and self-help books and Buddhist groups and all of that, I was always, as I say, trying to copy how someone else was doing it. I wanted what they had. Whereas for the first time I was actually exploring the kind of concept of what higher power was to me, and I was just trying all different sorts of stuff. I've been to Brahma Kumarist groups, Buddhist groups, churches. I did an Alpha course. I did all sorts of things in my early sobriety to try and really find what I connected to as a higher power. And that has just opened up a level of faith that is just beautiful. I love the level of faith I have in my life. It's moved beyond faith to knowing. I absolutely know 100% that there is a power greater than me at work in my life. And I firmly believe that if you work in line with that, rather than against it, in terms of taking life on life terms, then it works for you. Because since getting sober in the last 6 years of my life, by handing my life over to a power greater than myself and not fighting life and going along with it, my life just opened up and flowered in the right ways. So my proof has come from the years I've lived so far with a spiritual practice. Now, in terms of what I believe in, it's quite complex to try and explain. I think it's more closely aligned with Buddhism in that I don't see a Godhead figure as such. I use the word God because it's easier to explain what you mean. I like acronyms for God, actually. In AA, we often say God stands for good, orderly direction. I love that. Because I don't see it as a being, and I definitely don't see it as a judging being. I see it as almost like an energy that runs through everything and makes things tick. I mean, there's some amazing power that makes the sun go up and come down, and the moon go up and come down, and the grass grow, and flowers grow, and insects eat this and this. This the order of life, which is amazing. And yes, it's given by science and all of that, but it's still a miracle that it all works in complete, proper synchronization. That, to me, is God, higher power, whatever you want to call it. And I believe that what happens, I go along with what Jung says, in terms that we're so lost in the world because we've lost connection to this spirit. And half of the pain in the world comes from trying to make your life be what you want it to be, when sometimes it's beyond your control, and we spend so much time fighting, and that actually causes the misery. When you go along with life on life terms, i.e. in line with God, higher power, life just works. And that is how I see my spirituality. This is a bit of a rambling video. I do apologise, but you wanted to know. I read something which was either in the Celestine Prophecy or in Conversations with God, where the concept of God is explained in how it's a conscious energy, and that if you have this conscious energy, it's all great, but it doesn't really know it exists. It has to separate to know itself. Bear with me. So, we are, as is everything, humans, animals, rocks, everything, is what is separated from God. And it had to separate from God so that God could know itself by looking back on itself. Is this a bit deep? I'm sorry. So I really can see this, how we're all actually God, separated from God. So when life works, is because we're remembering that, and remembering that whilst this does feel very real that we're down here, and this experience we're having does feel real, it's been done on purpose so that we can have different experiences. We are all the one person, we're all God, we're all part of God, of higher power, but we separated off so that the consciousness of God could experience itself in relation to itself in different situations. I'm really sorry if I'm waffling, but you asked for this. So in terms of how I practice, being that my main belief is that when you live in tune with your higher self, which is God, it all works. So to do that, you need to meditate, because there's so much going on in your mind that's cognitive processing and thinking about yesterday and thinking about what's happening tomorrow, that it can get in the way and take you away from the moment. I see that there's two aspects of the self, okay? So there's your higher consciousness, which is in tune with God, higher power, and there's this lower consciousness that's the wanting, grasping being. So when you're mindless, you're in the grasping lower being, and when you're conscious of your mind and what's going on, I kind of like the observer of your mind, that's when you're in higher conscious. So meditation helps to get you in line with that. So the way I practice is that every day I have formal meditation practice where I'll sit in the morning. It can range anything from 10 minutes to 45 minutes. Ideally, I like to do half an hour every morning. It doesn't always work like that, but even if I can just get 10 minutes, that's great. I like to meditate at night as well. That happens rarely, unfortunately. I get in really good routines and then they go again. So those formal periods are set periods so I can practice that. And then throughout the day, there's constant kind of noticing when the mind's wandered and bringing it back. So using lots of mindfulness throughout the day and noticing when I'm kind of wanting to rub up against life and not take life on life's terms and take a step back and kind of hand my life over to God. So it's very much in line with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, handing over to a higher power, treating people well. The saying in AA is clean house, trust God, help others. And that's how I live my life. I keep my side of the street clean as much as I can. When I do wrong, I try and apologise as quickly as I can. I trust, even when things are going hideously wrong, that there's a reason behind it. And I do that because I have 6 years of proof that by just handing over and trusting that it will be okay. And I help others because you only keep what you have by giving it away. I love that saying, and it's so true. And when I'm feeling really awful, if I help someone else, I feel better. And that life in the service of others is such an amazing thing for self-esteem and for getting in touch with something greater than ourselves. It gets you outside yourself. The service I do is in AA, obviously, but also like helping on here, you know, sharing on here, answering messages and things like that. I'm not working at the moment, and I need to have purpose in my life. I really believe that's part of living spiritually. So my purpose at the moment is the volunteer work I do, that service, and stuff I do on here and through here is service. And all of these things together are part of my daily spiritual program. I like to go on spiritual retreats as well to top things up and learn new things. It also gives a new life into my practice. I like to go to spiritual talks and lectures and things. It's just something that is constantly evolving, and it's very much tied into my daily living, my recovery, all sorts. So I'm incredibly passionate about my spiritual life. I love it. I love self-development. I love self-reflection. I love self-knowledge. I love the feeling of knowing that there's something greater than me out there that is supporting me, and there's a purpose for me. You know, it's a wonderful feeling to be in touch with this, and it's only been since getting clean and sober and engaged with my recovery that I've been able to access this, you know. So it's wonderful to talk about this. I do apologise if I've gone on somewhat, but it is something I'm very, very passionate about, and it's been really lovely to share with you some of this. Now, I know you've asked lots of other different questions to do with my spirituality, so I thought today I would just have a bit of a random blur about everything I believe in and all of that, and then maybe you can ask me some questions about what I've said, and I can be a bit more specific and elaborate on certain things. So please do drop me a message in the comments below and let me know your thoughts, anything you want to know. Tell me about the way you believe, etc. It'd be lovely to hear from you as well. This is a topic that is really lovely to talk about, and I don't know why, personally, why I shy away from it so much, and why we do tend to just shy away from it. We're such a scientific-driven culture that we kind of go, oh no, spirituality, mustn't talk about that. But it's part of living, isn't it? We are spiritual beings. That's who we are. We have this core of us that, you know, is greater than everything else. I don't know, I'm going to waffle again, so I'm going to shut up now. But yes, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for putting up with my ramble. I look forward to chatting more about this with you. Love you all. Have a great weekend.